Remove and replace parts. HP Z2 Mini G9 Workstation Desktop PC. Note: before disassembly, turn off the computer through the operating system. Disconnect the power from the computer by unplugging the power cord from the computer. Disconnect all external devices from the computer. If the computer is on a stand, remove it. How to replace the access panel. Removal. Press down on the release latch and slide the panel backwards. Lift the panel and remove. Replacement. Note the alignment tabs on the underside of the panel. Place the alignment tabs over the screws, then slide the panel forward into place. How to replace the fan. Before you begin, remove the access panel. Removal. Loosen the two captive P1 Phillips head screws. Lift the fan to access the cable connector. Disconnect the system fan cable from the connector and remove the fan. Replacement. Place the fan near the system board. Reconnect the fan cable to the system board. Place the fan on the system board and tighten the two captive P1 Phillips head screws to secure. How to replace the hood sensor. Before you begin, remove the access panel and fan. Removal. Disconnect the hood sensor cable from the system board. Use a tool to slide the sensor toward the back of the computer to remove it. Replacement. Slide the sensor tab into the guide to secure it into place. Reconnect the hood sensor cable. How to replace the heatsink. Before you begin, remove the access panel and fan. Removal. In the order indicated on the heatsink, loosen the four captive T15 slotted Torx screws. Lift the heatsink off the system board and remove. Replacement. Note: before replacing the heatsink, the thermal grease should be replaced. The thermal grease should be replaced every time the heatsink is removed. Use alcohol and a soft cloth or an alcohol swab to clean all thermal grease from the heatsink and processor. Use the thermal grease applicator to apply the thermal grease to the processor. Place the heatsink in position on the system board. Note: the heatsink has numbers adjacent to the following four screws. Tighten the four captive T15 slotted Torx screws that secure the heatsink to the system board in numerical order. How to replace the processor. Before you begin, remove the access panel, the fan, and the heatsink. Removal. Pull the locking lever away from the processor and then rotate the lever to its full open position. Raise and rotate the microprocessor retainer to its fully open position. Carefully lift and remove the processor from the socket. Replacement. Note: the CPU alignment triangle is marked on the protection plate as well as the CPU. Gently place the CPU into the CPU socket with the alignment triangle in the correct location. Lower the protective plate. Secure the CPU into place by lowering the locking lever and securing it under the latch. How to replace the system memory. Before you begin, remove the access panel and fan. Removal. Lift the protective cover off the system memory. Press outward on the two latches on each side of the system memory. Pull the system memory out of the socket and remove. Replacement. Match the notch on the system memory with the tab on the memory socket. Slide the memory into the socket at approximately a 30-degree angle. Press the system memory down and lock into place. Replace the protective cover by pressing into the alignment teeth. How to replace the Flex I/O module. Before you begin, Remove the access panel, the fan, and the heatsink. Removal. Remove the two P1 Phillips head screws. Lift the module to disconnect it from the connector on the system board and remove. Replacement. Align the holes on the module to the mounts on the system board. Press down on the module to reconnect to the system board. Replace the two P1 Phillips head screws. How to replace the PCIe expansion cards. Before you begin, remove the access panel. Removal. To remove a PCIe expansion card, press the blue release lever on the riser assembly board to release the expansion card. Slide the expansion card from the riser assembly to remove. Remove the two Phillips head screws that secure the bracket to the card and remove the bracket for use on the replacement PCIe expansion card. Replacement. Place the bracket on the PCIe expansion card. Secure the bracket with two Phillips head screws. Align the expansion card to the PCIe slot on the expansion board and press to secure into place. How to replace the riser assembly and expansion cards. Before you begin, remove the access panel and any PCIe expansion cards. Removal. Loosen one captive P1 Phillips head screw. If a USB expansion card is present, lift the locking bar with minimal force and disconnect the USB card cable. Lift at the two locations marked in blue to release the riser assembly from the computer. The riser assembly is installed in the expansion card slot on the system board. Remove two P0 Phillips head screws that secure the USB expansion card to the bracket and remove. To remove the expansion board from the riser assembly, remove four T15 slotted Torx screws. Remove the expansion board from the riser assembly. Replacement. Align the holes on the expansion board to the mounts on the riser assembly. Secure the expansion board with four T15 slotted Torx screws. Replace any USB expansion cards by securing the expansion card to the bracket with two P0 Phillips head screws. Align the holes on the riser assembly to the pins on the system board. Press down to connect. Insert the USB board cable into the ZIF connector on expansion card and press the locking bar down to lock cable into place. Tighten the one captive P1 Phillips head screw. How to replace the M.2 solid-state drives. Before you begin, remove the access panel and the riser assembly. Removal. Remove the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the M.2 solid-state drive to the system board. Grasp the M.2 solid-state drive by the sides, slide it out of the connector on the system board, and remove. Replacement. Insert the M.2 solid-state drive into the connector on the system board. Replace the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the M.2 solid-state drive to the system board according to the size of the drive. How to replace the wireless LAN module. Before you begin, remove the access panel and the riser assembly. Removal. Remove the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. Remove the plastic connector cover from the wireless LAN module and set it aside for later replacement. Caution! Use care when disconnecting the wireless antenna cable from the WLAN module. A damaged cable or connector can degrade performance. Use tweezers or needle nose pliers to disconnect the wireless antenna cables from the connectors on the wireless LAN module. Grasp the wireless LAN module by the sides, slide it out of the connector on the system board, and remove. Replacement. Insert the wireless LAN module into the connector on the system board. Reconnect the wireless antenna cable to the connector on the wireless LAN module. Replace the plastic connector cover over the wireless antenna cable on the wireless LAN module. Replace the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. How to replace the external wireless antenna. Before you begin, remove the access panel, fan, heat sink, and riser assembly. Removal. Remove the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. Remove the plastic connector cover from the wireless LAN module and set it aside for later replacement. Caution: use care when disconnecting the wireless antenna cable from the LAN module. A damaged cable or connector can degrade performance. The external wireless antenna connector is noted on the wireless card as AUX1. Use tweezers or needle nose pliers to disconnect the external wireless antenna cable from the connector on the wireless LAN module. Remove the cable from the guides in the inside front and right sides of the computer. Remove the Phillips screw from the antenna on the rear of the computer. Squeeze the sides on the antenna cover and remove. Pull and remove the external wireless antenna. Replacement. Insert the external wireless antenna into position on the rear of the computer while guiding the cable through the hole in the chassis. Replace the antenna cover. Secure the antenna with one P0 Phillips head screw. Route the cable into the routing channels on the chassis. Reconnect the wireless antenna cable to the connector on the wireless LAN module. Replace the plastic connector cover over the wireless antenna cable on the wireless LAN module. Replace the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. How to replace the internal wireless antenna. Before you begin, remove the access panel, fan, heat sink, riser assembly, and secondary M.2 solid-state drive. Removal. Remove the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. Remove the plastic connector cover from the wireless LAN module and set it aside for later replacement. Caution: use care when disconnecting the wireless antenna cable from the LAN module. A damaged cable or connector can degrade performance. The internal wireless antenna connector is noted on the wireless card as Main 2. Use tweezers or needle nose pliers to disconnect the internal wireless antenna cable from the connector on the wireless LAN module. Remove the Phillips screw from the internal antenna. Slide the antenna toward the back of the computer and remove. Replacement. Insert the internal wireless antenna into position. Secure with one P0 Phillips head screw. Reconnect the wireless antenna cable to the connector on the wireless LAN module. Replace the plastic connector cover over the wireless antenna cable on the wireless LAN module. Replace the P0 Phillips head screw that secures the wireless LAN module to the system board. How to replace the RTC battery. Before you begin, remove the access panel and the riser assembly. Removal. Disconnect the RTC battery cable from the system board. Pull the tab on the power button to release the battery. Remove the RTC battery. Replacement. Press the RTC battery into the battery holder. Reroute the RTC battery cable through the guide and reconnect to the system board. How to replace the power button. Before you begin, remove the access panel, the riser assembly, and the RTC battery. Removal. Disconnect the power button cable from the system board. Use a tool to release the inside top of the power button assembly. Remove the assembly. Replacement. Press the power button assembly into the holder until it locks into place. Reconnect the power button cable to the system board. How to replace the speaker. Before you begin, remove the access panel, the riser assembly, secondary M.2 SSD, and the RTC battery, power button, and internal wireless antenna. Removal. Disconnect the speaker cable from the system board. Lift the power button holder tab and pull speaker away from the chassis and remove. Replacement. Press the speaker into place under the power button assembly holder. Reconnect the speaker cable to the system board. How to replace the system board. Before you begin, remove the access panel, fan, heatsink, processor, memory modules, riser assembly, M.2 solid-state drives, wireless LAN module, external wireless antenna, internal wireless antenna, flex I/O module, battery, power button, and speaker. Removal. Remove the T15 slotted Torx screw from the USB bracket. Remove the USB bracket. Remove the 4 T15 slotted Torx screws that secure the system board to the chassis. Remove the two 4mm hex standoffs that secure the system board to the chassis. Caution: use care when removing the system board from the chassis. The external connectors fit snugly into the cutouts on the rear of the chassis. Slide the system board to the side to remove the external connectors from their cutouts in the case. Gently lift the front of the system board to a 45-degree angle and remove from the chassis. Replacement. Insert the back of the system board into the chassis at a 45-degree angle. Gently set the system board into the chassis. Slide the system board to the left side of the chassis and tow the external connectors into the cutouts. Replace the two 4mm hex standoffs that secure the system board to the chassis. Replace the 4 T15 slotted Torx screws that secure the system board to the chassis. Replace the USB bracket. Replace the T15 slotted Torx screw that secures the USB bracket.